The story begins with some kids sitting around a campfire, telling each other the tale of a witch who was accused of witchcraft and assassinating her. One of them narrates that the witch brought the plague to the kids and was under a tree right here. He further states that the people tried to butcher her, but she survived. After hanging her, they cut her into 9 pieces and buried her in 9 different places. People still claim to hear her cries from the tree, and if children try to play near the tree, she assassinates them. He dares the rest to touch the tree. 500 years after the event of kids telling the tales, Amber is purchasing an old property and visits the site with the agent. The real estate agent tells her not to believe whatever she hears about the place. When Amber asks her what the rumors about the place are, the real estate agent ignores her. Emma and Jake are siblings, and their father is admitted to the hospital, suffering from a coma. They are both moving to a new house with their mother Amber. They enter the building and immediately hate it. The building is old and rusty from the inside. Their mother says that they can have larger bedrooms and more space than their previous home. Jake starts to look at the ceiling and follows her mother and sister inside the house. Later, Jake lies on his bed, listening to music. Suddenly, he feels he has heard someone's voice. He takes off the ear set, but silence welcomes him. The following day, Amber is having a chat with Emma, and she tells Emma all about her duties. As she is about to leave, Emma sees a strange boy standing by the gate. He looks weird and stands with his head tilted to the side. She finds it odd, but before she can do anything, the boy disappears. She finds it creepy, but doesn't pay much attention to it. Jake is running away from some school and hides behind a tree. He peeks to check if they have gone when something stings his palm. He looks at his hand and finds that it was an insect. He runs away from the tree. Later, when Amber is doing the laundry, she finds Jake's shirt with a massive blood stain on it. Emma decides to inquire about it, and when she approaches him, Jake is seen sketching the tree from the forest. Jake tells her that he hears odd sounds, but she tells him that it is nothing but his imagination. Subsequently, during the night, Jake is standing in the bathroom, and when he looks at his hand, his palms suddenly flash before him. His hands are wounded with blood oozing out of them. Fortunately, it's just a hallucination. At the other end, Emma is secretly making out with her boyfriend Mike, and Amber is standing before the mirror when she hears a sound coming from upstairs. She approaches Emma's room and Emma hides Mike in the closet. Amber tells Emma that she has heard something. Emma suggests that it might be Jake, as she hasn't heard anything unusual. While they're chatting, Mike sees a wounded boy inside the closet. He screams with and bursts out of the closet. He tells them something is in there, and Amber gets furious. Both mother and daughter start to fight. At the same time, Jake is sitting on the stairs, trying to block the voices from entering his ears. Later on, Emma wakes up from her sleep and finds herself inside the woods near their house. She stands up baffled and begins to explore the place. Her mind is wondering if it is a dream. She keeps walking until she hears someone say, "Isabel." She sees a boy sneaking behind a tree, but she wakes up before seeing who it was. She walks down the hall and finds her brother sleepwalking. The following day, when Emma is busy feeding the pigs, she finds blood everywhere. She gets panicked and leaves. Meanwhile, Jake is walking back from school when the same from his class cover his head with a bag and drag him away. They have surrounded Jake. The claims that the house Jake lives in belongs to a mother who child, and then later on the farm. Emma and Amber are talking to each other, discussing the health of Emma's sick father, Tony. All of a sudden, Emma sees a kid standing by the gate with his face covered in a scarecrow mask. But when Amber turns around, the kid disappears. They both go out to examine with a gun, but instead, they find Jake sleeping in the hay. They bring him back inside. The from the school tell Jake that they can call the spirit of the witch who had assassinated her through the Ouija board. They all sit together and place their index fingers on the board and start to speak to the spirit. As they ask about its presence, a cold breeze touches them from all sides. As they look at the board, it says, yes. They get excited and ask if the spirit is of the mother who claimed her, but it moves to no. Suddenly, the board piece moves to 9. They wonder what 9 means. When Jake asks if that is how old the spirit was when it passed away, the board says, yes. They start asking different questions about how the spirit became deceased, and they ask to give them a sign. Suddenly, Jake hears some banging noise from the outside. Jake asks the spirit if it is making the noises outside. The board says no. He asks the spirit if it is something dangerous, but before the board could have answered, one of their friends jumps from behind and scares them. They all depart, leaving Jake alone with the board. Before going inside, Jake glances at the board. The board has answered yes. When Jake enters the house, the tie him up, blindfold him, and lock him up in the attic. They switch off the lights and shut the door as they leave. Jake shouts for help, but nobody bothers to do anything. One girl from the group feels sorry for him, but no one cares. One of the boys is standing in Jake's room. He sees Jake's name written in the mirror with blood, but ignores it and leaves. As he leaves, the writing disappears. Suddenly, Jake hears noises. He wonders who is making them and assumes that it's the bullies. Meanwhile, one of them sees Jake wearing a scarecrow mask inside the room and wonders how he got out. Jake doesn't respond and leaves the room. The bully immediately exits and begins following him. He keeps following him upstairs. The door slightly moves ajar, and Jake enters it. Follows Jake inside the washroom. But when he enters, Jake is nowhere to be seen. As he looks at himself in the mirror, someone grabs him from behind, and a crucifix appears in the bathtub. A loud wail escapes from his mouth, and the door slams shut. Some time later, Emma is in the hospital along with her boyfriend. They see Tony's fingers move, and they feel jubilant. Emma feels thrilled and excited. She asks Tony to give her a sign, and he lets out Jake's name and something about the house. Tony keeps saying house, hinting to Emma that Jake is in danger back home. Emma is baffled and clueless about Jake. She calls the nurse to check on her father, but the nurse doesn't tell her any good news regarding her father and asks her not to raise her hopes for his recovery. Emma asks her boyfriend to leave for the house. At the same time, Jake is still trapped in the attic and is hearing bizarre voices. Suddenly, the cupboard door swings open, and a radiant beam of light brightens everything up. Then, another door opens with the same luminous light. Jake is still blindfolded and knows nothing about the events unfolding around him. A hand creeps inside, and Jake can't see anything but senses something is wrong. He keeps on shouting for help. Meanwhile, several hands are slowly approaching him. Suddenly, he hears a scream upstairs. The girl in the group disagrees with them, as she feels this is all cruel. When she hears Jake scream, she goes upstairs inside the attic. She enters the attic and keeps hearing Jake, but cannot see where he is. She switches the lights on, but to her horror, the room is empty. However, Jake's yells continue to echo in the room. She feels petrified because Jake's screams are deafening. However, she doesn't see a thing. She opens one of the cupboard doors, but finds nothing. As she peeks inside, the adjacent door creaks open and captures her attention. She can still hear Jake crying for help. She hesitantly walks toward the adjacent door and fully opens it, but she finds nothing. Suddenly, the exit door behind her opens. As she sees outside, she finds Jake wearing a scarecrow mask helplessly from the ceiling. She screams at the top of her lungs and runs away. At the exact moment, the boys hear their friend's screams from the bathroom, and they follow him there. They can hear his quiet mumbling coming from inside. They try to open the door, but it seems to be locked. Suddenly, the door swings open on its own. They cautiously enter the bathroom and become horror-struck as they find their friend's lifeless body in the bathtub, with his throat slit open. They get terrified and run toward the exit. Before leaving the house, they look upstairs near the attic and find someone in the same uniform, wearing a scarecrow mask standing and tapping his fingers on the railing. After some time, the friend they found deceased in the bathroom wakes up and rubs his hand across his throat. He looks around and finds himself lying in the bathtub. Eerily, he stands up and leaves. Meanwhile, Emma and her boyfriend are approaching their house when they see him running away. Looking at him running like this alarms Emma, and she rushes toward the house. She has a negative vibe for her brother. They hear Jake shouting in the attic, and they go upstairs. The boyfriend opens the door and finds Jake trapped inside the cupboard. He lets him out and unties him. However, as he grabs Jake, he starts to shout in. While all of this is happening, somewhere near the town, a woman named Eva is calling the spirit of a girl. Eva is blind and can only see in the dark where the spirits dwell. A lady is sitting beside Eva, and she wants to talk to her deceased sister. Eva helps people with that. She is telling Eva about her sister, when Eva suddenly asks the lady if she has any children, which the lady denies. The spirit of a child possesses her body, as Eva starts to speak to it. Eva, in a rough whisper, says 9. The other lady freaks out and leaves the room. Eva starts coughing and calls her sister. Her sister approaches and asks if everything is fine. At the other end, Emma is sitting with Jake and her boyfriend inside the kitchen. She is trying to calm Jake down, telling him they'll find whoever hurt him. Suddenly, she sees the same masked boy behind a tree and gasps out. They all look in the direction, but the figure is already gone. Her boyfriend runs out to find the intruder. Suddenly, someone passes behind him. He turns and starts to look for that unknown person, arming himself with a rod. Suddenly, he sees 3 letters painted on the wall. IZA. The paint seems wet, as if it was painted very recently. Amber calls the cops and complains about the Later, Emma and Amber fight over Emma's boyfriend, and Amber slaps her. Emma tries to make amends with her mother, as she doesn't want to lose her too. She asks Amber why she purchased a property where a mother had butchered her. Amber looks at Emma with confusion and asks who told her this story. She replies that Jake did. Later, Amber visits Jake and tells them that those are just telling stories, and that the mother didn't assassinate her in this house. She just in the barn. Jake wonders if she might have buried the kid in the woods. That's why nobody could ever find the body. Later, Amber is talking to someone on the phone when she hears Jake scream. When she approaches him, she finds him looking at a bunch of lifeless mice lying in a circle. There were 9 rats. Emma is sleeping in bed when someone tries getting under the sheets beside her. When she wakes up and looks at the sheets, to her horror, she finds no one. Very creep her out, she goes into the kitchen to get a drink. She opens the fridge and pours herself a glass when she hears a loud scream of a child. She follows the sounds and finds Jake standing by the gate. The screams echo around the place, but she can't find its source. Later, Jake is sitting in the woods, scribbling something in his book. Suddenly, someone approaches from behind with an enormous crucifix. He senses danger, but when he turns around, he finds no one. Emma is sitting on her couch when the TV switches on. She tries to switch it off, but the TV remote won't work. Upon complaining, Amber accuses her of being drunk. Meanwhile, Jake is returning from somewhere. While coming back, he feels someone is standing behind the bushes. But when he looks back, he finds no one. He's in his room drawing something when he hears knocking from the room in front of him. He goes toward it and opens it. It is dark, so he takes a flashlight along. What he doesn't notice is a girl hiding nearby. He keeps looking around, and the door suddenly closes behind him, with the flashlight starting to blink. Suddenly, he sees someone in the flickering light and gets terrified. He looks around and sees a person wearing a scarecrow mask in the dark. At the exact moment, the torch starts to work, and he finds nothing. He senses someone behind him, and his heart starts to beat fast. He turns around and looks at a girl. In that moment, he wakes up from his dream. He is in the same room, but the sunlight from the window has made the room brighter. Emma visits Jake's room and finds several drawings. She is confused about what's going on. She finds something on her laptop about a redwood tree. She clicks it open and starts to read a story. Simultaneously, Jake is walking in the woods where he finds a boy running nearby. He follows him and finds a locket hanging from a branch. Meanwhile, Emma is reading the story about children of the plague. Jake keeps walking and falls to the ground. There he finds the same circle with the stones. He returns to his room, finds Emma, and informs her about his discovery. Jake takes her to the same place with her boyfriend, and they start digging. They find some bones and a dagger. Emma starts examining the bone in her room and hides it under her bed. The next night, Emma is sleeping when she suddenly wakes up, finding a scarecrow figure standing over her body. Turns out, it's just a dream. She wakes up and discovers someone sleeping beside her. When she checks, it's just Jake. The next morning, she hears Amber's loud cries. When she follows, she finds Jake's unconscious body. Emma goes to the church and finds the priest there. She tells him about the farm she had moved to and the nearby tree. She asks the priest if that could be the redwood tree. She further informs him about discovering the stones and knife. The priest wonders if those were the 9 children that went missing. She asks him if he knows about this story, to which he tells her about an innocent woman named Isabel who was accused of being a witch. She was by the locals for bringing the plague and assassinating her son. Since then, it's believed that she haunts the place. He further tells her about a boy who worked at the cathedral. He found a book in which the names of the missing 9 children were mentioned, but nobody truly knows what happened to them. He gives Emma the contact information of someone who could help her. Emma goes to their house and inquires about the previous tenants. She tells them that the previous owner had a boy who got severely sick and could not move from the bed. Their mother performed the exorcism and saved that boy, but unfortunately, she lost her life. Eva was the last person to see what had happened, and it was the last thing she had ever seen. Since then, she can only see in the dark, meaning she can see the deceased. They go to Eva, and she asks her if Jake has talked to Isabel, which she denies. Emma wants to bring Eva home and help Jake. Back home, Emma goes upstairs and finds Jake vomiting blood in the bathroom. Amber takes him to the hospital. Emma is in the bathtub, trying to relax, when someone grabs her head. When she opens her eyes, she finds nothing. She calls Mike over, and they try to summon the witch through the Ouija board. Mike observes that the knife has moved, and it is pointing toward the woods. They continue to ask questions and hear screams coming from the woods. Suddenly, Emma sees something spine-chilling behind Mike, and asks him not to turn around. As Mike turns around, it's no longer there. They both go inside the house and find blood marks on the mirror. They try to check on the security cameras, but each one has missed footage from the specific time. The next day, when Amber is not home, Emma calls Eva to examine their house. Meanwhile, Amber is in the hospital sitting beside Tony. She is sharing her heart out when Tony says Eva in his sleep. Eva is in the hay area with her sister and Emma. She asks for the knife they had found earlier. Suddenly, they hear a loud bang. Eva cuts her hand and drops blood on the ground. In that moment, Jake wakes up. Amber is furious at Emma for inviting Eva into the house. Emma tells her that the children who were plagued also spit out blood like Jake. She asks her to just believe her and let them do what is supposed to be done. Amber, upon listening to her name, agrees to it. They sit around a table holding hands. Eva's sister tells everyone not to break the circle no matter what. Mark is sitting with Jake in his room, taking care of him. Suddenly, he sees an arm moving behind the chair he had been sitting on. They start the ritual. Eva says that she can feel the children, and they're afraid to come out of the dark. She keeps talking to them and commands the rest to talk to them too. Eventually, they hear various children crying. The sounds grow louder. After lots of trying, one of the children possesses Eva's body to speak. The child is 9 years old and replies to all questions asked by Eva. As this unfolds, Eva's eyes start to bleed as the witch possesses Eva and tells her that it was the priest who had butchered. He covered her son's head with the scarecrow mask and slit his throat. Then he buried him in a dark place along with the knife. Eva asks what she wants from the family, to which she replies that she wants to assassinate the Lands to take revenge. However, Eva starts screaming, and Amber gets furious. She kicks them out and gets angry at Emma as well. Meanwhile, Mike is looking at the drawings Jake made. Suddenly, Jake dreams that her mother is lying near haystacks, and someone is walking beside her. He wakes up and finds Mike in a trance. Mike is apparently possessed, and he takes Jake away. As Emma and Amber continue to fight, Eva's sister returns, asking about Jake. They all look at the table and realize the knife is missing. When they check for Jake, they don't find him either. Emma realizes that he's going to be just like other children. As they run outside, they find Mike, his eyes bleeding. Eva is sitting beside Jake, holding the knife. She's not wearing the blindfold anymore, but when she turns around, it's not Eva at all. Her body is possessed by Isabel's spirit. Amber takes her gun and asks her to step away from her son. Eva's sister tries to stop Amber from doing something catastrophic. Emma attacks Isabel. However, she catches her and tries to strangle her. Amidst the chaos, Jake wakes up and sees his father standing beside him. Jake stands up, grabs the dagger, and stabs Eva in the back. She drops to the ground. Eva's sister can't see anything anymore, as she can only see in the dark. She sees her sister standing with the 9 children and leaving the place. Tony passes away in the hospital. Later on, the family calls Eva's sister, as after Eva, she can also see and speak to the deceased. They say their goodbyes to Tony and start living their lives normally again. The final scene shows Emma going for a bath. However, she finds IZA written in the bathroom mirror. Eerily, Emma's bloody hand is seen as she drops down, indicating that Isabel might have not left after all.